Good morning, everybody. This morning, we're going to talk about money. Specifically, we're going to talk about your money. Specifically, we're going to talk about Donald Trump and your money. We're going to talk about how your money is going to go to Donald Trump directly or indirectly, and we'll talk a little bit more about the village idiot Donald Trump's grift and how he's taking your money. And then we'll talk a little bit about Donald Trump's stock trading. But before we do that, I want to bring TikTok in today. It's been a while since we've had TikTok joining us, on these, in these streams and recordings. So I want to bring them in. Just prior to the TikTok getting here, of course, let me remind you, if you are with us on YouTube or Substack, this is where I record all the time and go live all the time. Please subscribe. If you are a free subscriber, please consider upgrading to a paid subscription if that's something that's comfortable for you. But irrespective, thank you for being here. So without further ado, let me just take a moment and let me see if I can bring the Substack community in first. Here we go. We've got Substack in here. My lighting's a little out of whack today too, guys. I have to we're making some improvements, hopefully this week, to my office here because the sun comes in and works against my lighting system. All right, let's go live on TikTok as well. And then we'll be good to go here. Almost there, guys. Okay, so we are live on TikTok as well now. So this morning, as I said, I want to if you're just joining us, welcome. Thank you for being here. Hi, Aggie. How are you? Good morning today. I know it's pretty early. So today we're going to talk about money. We're going to talk about the village idiot Donald Trump's money, or money that the village idiot Donald Trump wants to take from you, right? Money that he wants to take from you to do the things that he wants to do for himself, which is sometimes earning money for himself or taking money for himself, taking taxpayer-funded dollars. Sometimes it is manipulating money, manipulating the stock market, which I know a lot of the MAGA folks are very upset about, and I rightfully so. I agree with them that Democrats and Republicans in Congress have manipulated the stock market for their own gain. Donald Trump has taken that to a new level. We're going to go talk about that in a little bit. But let's start out with a $10 billion lawsuit. Let's start there. You probably have heard about this already. This probably isn't news for any of you out there, right? You're probably all familiar with the village idiot Donald Trump's $10 billion lawsuit. If you're not, let me just give you a quick update. Update about it. If you're familiar with it, then just bear with me for 72 seconds. The village idiot Donald Trump was mad, amongst other things, that during his first administration, a contractor for the IRS had leaked his tax returns. Now, of course, leaking those tax returns was very helpful. It was certainly illegal. I don't say that it was like legal, because it wasn't, but it was helpful because it finally got us to, it was one of the first times that we were able to look into his finances just as regular everyday citizens and see what kind of grifting and tax cheating creep he is, right? So that was, and to see, although many of us knew this anyway, it did show many people in the world that he was an epic and uncontrollable liar, because he had told us, how his tax returns were on the up and up and how he did such a good job. And he's a fantastic, brilliant businessman. And he does great things. And we learned from his tax returns when they were released illegally during his first term, we learned that he hadn't paid his taxes in decades. We learned, more importantly, about his crooked bankruptcies. We learned about the fact that he would overvalue his properties when asking for bank loans, and then would undervalue his properties when having to pay taxes. There was all sorts of grift and cheating. And the village idiot, and we learned more about when those tax returns were released. We learned more about his bankruptcies and his, just staggering incompetence when it came to running companies or pretending to run companies, and how there were smarter, equally as crooked people as he was surrounding him who were big on helping him cheat his taxes and run companies into the ground, but make money off of that while he didn't pay contractors or anyone else. Remember all that? So that was all a thing. That all came out of the village idiot Donald Trump's tax returns when they were released. But irrespective, the contractor who did release them did it illegally. And although it's the village idiot Donald Trump, and I appreciate the fact that his tax returns were released and that we could all see them, it's something that I would have never done because I wouldn't want to break the law, unlike the village idiot himself, Donald Trump, who is fine with that. But irrespective, the contractor who released those tax returns was, caught. He was indicted. He was tried for his crimes, and he's now serving 5 years in prison. Well, for any normal president, for any normal person, right? But for any normal U.S. president, which has been every president certainly in my lifetime, that hasn't been the village idiot Donald Trump, for every mature adult, every competent president, every president who wasn't suffering from malignant narcissism and had, whose cognitive ability has been declining for years, which may be the result of frontotemporal dementia. We have lots of armchair, sociologists and psychiatrists trying to, effectively diagnose the lunatic. But, and it just being a corrupted creep. For someone like that, who just can't be okay with the fact that someone committed a crime and that crime was, directed at them, and that someone is serving time in prison for the crime. The village idiot Donald Trump always needs revenge. He needs vengeance, right? That's part of his malignant narcissism. He can't, it's not that he just wants revenge. It's that he needs revenge. He requires revenge. His frail ego, his childish nature, which is his profound immaturity, his all of his satisfaction and joy at watching other people suffer. All of these things, which are traits of his malignant narcissism, require that he get revenge. So the idiot was never satisfied, just be like us, like any of us would be, like a reasonable adult would be, with the fact that the guy committed the crime and now he's doing the time, right? So he had to get back at the guy. But it's not enough for the imbecile to get back at the guy, right? He has to get back at Democrats. He has to get back at news outlets. He has to get back at me. He has to get back, those of you that are, that are watching this that aren't part of the MAGA community. He's got to get back at you too. He's got to get us all back because we all wanted to see those tax returns. And we all used those tax returns and the accurate news reporting surrounding those tax returns. We all utilize that as effective lines of criticism. And the village idiot Donald Trump never could handle that. That's too much for him. So the revenge and the thing with him, the thing that is so indicative of his severe emotional instability is he can hang on to it for years, sometimes for decades. He has to get revenge, where you or I, as healthy people, can let go of a grudge after such a long time. It doesn't trouble us anymore because we have the emotional maturity. We have the common sense to just release it. Donald Trump is incapable of that. He hangs on to those grudges. They're oxygen for him, right? He lives and breathes it. He's a toxic troll. It's I would never want to be him. It's a horrible way to exist, right? But that's his personality, that's his instability, that's all the things that are the village idiot Donald Trump. So he's held on to that grudge forever. And now, and we've seen that in multiple areas of him, with him going after using the Department of Justice now. Before it was sociopath Bondi. Now it's dingbat Todd Blanche right there as the Attorney General's using the Department of Justice. It's drunken Kash Patel at the FBI, right? He's using these tools with these sycophantic weirdos that are running these agencies to get back at his political enemies, to get revenge, because he lives for accolades and vengeance. Those are the things that drive him. So those communities, especially the Department of Justice, are actively engaged in his revenge campaign. It's inarguable. I mean, it's not even a situation that is worthy of debate or up for debate. It is what's happening, right? So within his rage, once he became president of the United States for a second time, God forbid, but it's real, he sued the IRS for $10 billion. And his personal capacity, with his personal dingbat lawyers, he sued the IRS for $10 billion. Now, it's not a lawsuit he could possibly win. As a matter of fact, I don't remember the name of the judge in the lawsuit, but there's been ample reporting that the judge was going to make a decision within days at this point, and it may have already happened. I haven't been following it that closely. But there's been ample reporting that within days, this judge was going to make a final decision about whether or not the case could move forward. And most credible legal experts, I'm not talking about the goofballs on Fox News. I'm talking about real, actual legal experts that are, unbiased and aren't Trumpian sycophants, realize that the absurdity of the case is laughable. That he wants $10 billion because this guy released his tax returns, even though the guy's in jail. And there's a clear conflict of interest because the idiot is actively suing the department, a department that he's in charge of. Right? It can't possibly work. And the defendants in the case, who are you and me, who is the Department of Justice, he's also in control of, right? So the idiot is in charge of he's in charge of the agency that he's suing, and he's in charge of the defense attorneys, because we're the ones, in essence, being sued. We are the U.S. taxpayers. We are part of that agency that's being sued, invariably, right? So it is laughable at this point that, that it's a laughable case, because how could you possibly win a $10 billion lawsuit, right? Even move forward with a $10 billion lawsuit when you are in charge of the office that you're suing, and you are in charge of the folks that are defending the office that you're suing, AKA the taxpayers of the United States. So the judge is clearly planning to rule against this. All legal experts are saying, they're all saying it. Not all legal experts, because again, the hacks on Fox News and right-wing podcasters are not saying that, but credible legal experts are clearly making the point that this lawsuit will be dismissed. So what the Department of Justice has decided to do, because their job is not to protect us, their job is to get vengeance for Donald Trump, is there has been ample reporting that they are discussing, I shouldn't say intending, because that wouldn't be accurate now, because there hasn't been reporting that says this is a thing. They are discussing, which I think inevitably means intending, but they are discussing the idea of settling the suit, right? So I mean, I'm laughing because it's fucking ridiculous. So, right, and they're talking about settling this lawsuit before the judge throws it out of court. Because once the judge throws it out of court, they can't settle it. They can't give the village idiot Donald Trump anything, because the lawsuit goes away. So the only way the imbecile gets his revenge, the only way the imbecile gets, his money, your money, because a contractor who's serving 5 years in prison released his tax return years ago, the only way the idiot gets revenge for this, right, is they have to settle. They have to give him something before the court case is thrown out. So that at first, it looked like that the early reporting on this looked like what they were going to give him were one of two things, or both. So first, it looked like there was reporting that they were going to give him a bunch of money. They were going to settle for a bunch of money, not $10 billion, right? Because you're not settling for the whole amount of the lawsuit, but some huge amount of money that isn't $10 billion, right? And maybe it would have been 1 billion or 4 billion or 3 billion or 762 million and 26 cents, right? Whatever the fuck, right? We would have the Department of Justice would have agreed that we, the U.S. taxpayers, gave the village idiot Donald Trump either $1 billion or $4 billion or $724 million and 27 cents, right? Whatever it was. But we were going to just hand that over to the idiot because the idiot wanted it. And that was one option. Then another option, which would be either an and or an or, because it could be both, would be that the idiot would never, the IRS would never audit him again, and all of the previous audits that may have been done were irrelevant, which basically would have meant that the idiot just can commit, the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, has already given Donald Trump, the village idiot, has already given him absolute immunity for basically anything he does as president of the United States, right? I mean, he literally could unalive someone right now. I mean, technically he has, right? Where war crimes have been committed at his orders by our own military. The unaliving of all of those, I have to remember on TikTok, so I have to use TikTok language, of all of those young folks at that girls' school in Iran, right? And other war crimes in the Caribbean Sea and whatnot, right? So he's already done that, right? He's already engaged in that, but he can never be held, at least according to U.S. law, thanks to the Supreme Court, liable for that. Drunken Pete Hegseth, you're not. You don't have it. The Supreme Court didn't give you absolute immunity. So, hopefully you'll be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, after 2028. And maybe some of these generals as well, some of our generals, but we'll see about that. But because the Supreme Court gave the village idiot Donald Trump absolute immunity for any public acts that he says are things that he's doing as president of the United States, he's off the hook for all of it. Doesn't matter what the fuck he does, right? So, but for personal things, for personal grifts, for personal crimes, the Supreme Court doesn't protect him against that. So he's still liable for personal grifting, personal cheating, personal gain, white-collar crimes, right? Right? Before being president, while being president, and after being president, right? If he continues to grift, and why wouldn't he? And we have a story. I'm going to cover another story after this in just a few moments, which will be indicative of that. But the other part of this alleged deal that we were going to give him, this alleged settlement, would be that the IRS would never be able to audit him again, ever. He could just commit as many white-collar crimes as he wanted, evade taxes, manipulate markets, which he's been doing nonstop during the Iran war, both the commodities market and the stock market. And don't think he's not making a shit ton of money off of that personally. We're going to go into the stock market stuff in just a minute. There's pretty good reporting from CNBC. So he is potentially facing, when he leaves office, depending on who the president is, who the department, who the attorney general is in 2028. I'm sure it's going to be a Democrat, Democratic president, Democratic attorney general, depending on a plethora of things. There have been plenty of crimes in plain sight that we've seen him engage in, right? In terms of fraud. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? Who the fuck knows what's going on? Their market manipulation and all that other shit. Who the hell knows what's going on behind the scenes? I'm sure we've just seen that, what we've seen publicly, what good reporters have been able to unearth, what the village idiot himself, because he's so dumb that he's told us he's been involved with, whatever crimes. I'm sure we've just seen the tip of the iceberg. So who knows if there's fucking money laundering and, just a host of all sorts of crimes, right up to direct stealing of federal funds. I wouldn't be surprised, but all of that will be uncovered after the village idiot is no longer president of the United States. So that deal, where we'd give him a shit ton of money that wasn't $10 billion and or, never getting audited by the IRS again, would be, fantastic for him. And it would be the ultimate revenge, right? For him, for this release of the tax returns. Well, that reporting is still kind of floated out there. I don't know what's going to happen. But there's new reporting about what else we're going to do, what else we're going to give the village idiot, Donald Trump, that is going to benefit him, right? Directly or indirectly, as a settlement for this lawsuit. And who knows? We'll see if this is what it is. The New York Times reported that the Trump administration weighs $1.7 billion fund for allies investigated under Biden. Critics denounced the highly unusual plan, which, if you're on TikTok, I'm just reading this reporting, which has yet to be finalized or approved as a vast political slush fund financed by taxpayers. Just going to read a little bit of it. The Trump administration is considering the establishment of a $1.7 billion fund to compensate allies investigated by the Justice Department under President Biden, creating an ethical, legal, and political minefield for Republicans and the department's leadership. The unusual plan, which Democrats and former government officials criticize as a vast political slush fund financed by taxpayers, has yet to be finalized or approved, according to three people familiar with the situation who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss internal deliberations. Just one more paragraph. The proposal comes in response to various claims that the village idiot Donald Trump has made against the federal government he himself controls. He has sought compensation for the leak of his tax returns during his first term, as well as investigations into his handling of classified documents. So, in essence, this $1.7 billion slush fund, if they do it, is in essence, if you kind of read on, I don't want to bore you by reading the entire article right now, but this slush fund, if it happens, is another part of the settlement of the $10 billion that the village idiot is demanding for the release of his tax returns. So where does that leave you, and who would this benefit? This would be compensation directly paid out to whoever Donald Trump and the Department of Justice deem should be, that whoever was investigated by the Department of Justice when Biden was president, that Donald Trump wants to give the money to. So it certainly would include himself, right? It certainly could include money going to a host or a collection of millionaires and billionaires who he has pardoned already for no reason, actual criminals who he has pardoned. It could certainly go, and this is where I would expect a lot of it would be going, to his favorite January 6th rioting criminals, insurrectionists, seditious conspirators. So imagine Enrique Tarrio, right? He was convicted, indicted and convicted. And what was he serving? 20 years for seditious conspiracy, for in essence treason against the United States for his role in organizing the January 6th attack on the Capitol, right? Imagine the village idiot pardons him, lets him out of jail. There's also another creep. I can't think of his name. He was the leader of the Oath Keepers, a militia leader. He sort of led up the military portion of the plot, or the paramilitary portion of the plot. His oath-keeping goons were the guys who, were dressed up in uniform, who sort of led, to a certain extent, the rioters. They were as untrained as they are. They were the trained militia that was involved in the January 6th insurrection on the Capitol, right? That guy, again, if anybody knows his name, just throw it in the chat. I can't think of it right now. But that guy, he was also serving 20 or 25 years. He was released. So if you think about it, if it's just for Donald Trump and the January 6th rioters, right? There was something like 3,000 of the January 6th rioters. Now, not all 3,000 of them were indicted, but let's just say they were, right? I did the math, and basically everybody would get 500,000, right? If this 1.5 or $1.7 slush fund were to just go to the village idiot Donald Trump himself and the January 6th folks, everybody gets $500,000, right? So Again, for Donald Trump, that doesn't really matter. I mean, he's got billions and billions of stolen dollars anyway. But imagine Enrique Tarrio, the creep from the Oath Keepers, the the January 6th. Who was the guy in the Viking hat? I can't think of his name. I can't remember. The shaman, the January 6th shaman, right? Imagine these guys just suddenly get $500,000 in cash. Not only are they released from prison, well, the shaman was out of jail already anyway when he got his pardon. But and 1,500 of them, right? The idiot released, blanket pardoned 1,500 of them. So let's say they're the ones that just get the money, right? That's $1 million. Some of the most violent, corrupted weirdos, right, that we have had in the country, people who attacked our capital. I'm not saying that this is where the money's going, because Donald Trump doesn't give a shit about them, but his desperate effort to prove that January 6th never happened, and that the election was stolen, and that these people are patriots, and the FBI, Biden's FBI, was the ones who actually rioted. It wasn't these people. His desperate need for that could be enough that he gets more validation by giving each of these creeps $1 million of your money. How would that make you feel? If Enrique Tarrio, or the Oath Keeper guy, overnight, like that, got a check, tax-free, from the federal government. I don't know if it's tax-free. That's fake news. I'm adding that in. I don't know if they'd be taxed on it or not. But gets a check for $1 million. They're millionaires overnight. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that make you feel good? Wouldn't that make you feel good while you're paying fucking $5 or $4.50 for a tank of gas that you can't afford? Wouldn't that make you feel good? Wouldn't that make you feel good when you're busting your ass, going to work every day to support your family? Maybe at a job you like, or maybe at a fucking job you hate, but you're killing your ass. You're busting your ass. You're following the rules. You're doing things the way that you're supposed to do them. You're a good citizen. You're a patriot, no matter if you're a Republican or if you're a Democrat or if you're an independent. But you're busting your ass to make it every day, and you're already feeling twisted because that. They say $29 billion, which is a straight up lie, has been wasted on this war in Iran that gave us nothing and puts the Iranians in a far better position than they were before this stupid fucking war. It can't possibly be $29 billion. It's got to be, at best, it's got to be double that, right? But you're watching that happen. You've seen the price of all your shit go up because of the stupid tariffs. Now the price of all your shit, especially in the grocery store, is growing up further because trucks have to take that food to the grocery store, and they have to use diesel, and diesel is at $6 a gallon on a good day right now. So your shit's more expensive in the supermarket. You're just trying to keep your kids from, at best, you're trying to keep your young sons from getting red pilled on the fucking on YouTube. You got to pay attention to everything they watch because some right wing gamer, ultra extreme gamer like Clavicular is teaching them to what's it, Glam Max or some shit, and turn into you're trying to keep your kids from turning into right wing sociopaths, right? You're trying to keep your head afloat. You're hoping that one day you'll be able to go on a fucking vacation again, a staycation. And now, Enrique Tarrio, and again, I'm not saying it's going to happen. This slush, and I'm not reporting here that the slush fund is a thing. It's just up for discussion. So let's keep that in mind. I need to keep that in mind. This isn't a thing. But the more we know about it, the more we push back on it, the more the media hears about it, the more our elected representatives know about it, the better chances that the village idiot Donald Trump and the goofballs around him will chicken out because the politics will get worse for them. I mean, the motherfucker is polling at 33%, right? And he knows that. And I shouldn't have used that word because I just got a visibility restriction here on TikTok, and I should know better. That's not. I can't even blame TikTok for that because I know when you use certain trigger words, the algorithm doesn't like it. So what am I gonna do? But you should know about this. You should certainly understand that it's not news yet. It's reporting, it's speculation going on within the administration, but it could become real. And if you have a right as a citizen to speak out. Call your member of Congress. Call your senator, one of your senators or both your senators. And complain about this vehemently, especially if you're in a red state, especially if you have a Trump-loving, congressional representative for your district. Call and complain about this. Make a big deal out of this because that is your money. If this goes through, if this happens, if we make any kind of a deal with the village idiot Donald Trump, whether it's 10 billion or 5 billion or 3 billion or 1 billion or 1 million or 12 million, or whether it's that all the January 6 creeps become, or a couple handfuls of them become millionaires overnight, or if the deal is just that Donald Trump isn't audited anymore and he can commit any crime he wants, white collar crime that he wants, whatever the potential deal is, right? It's not in your best interest and you deserve better. And I don't care if you're a member of the MAGA community or the pro-democracy community, you deserve better. And Rachel, I am not a gift operative stirring up the masses. Not that I know what that is, but I can assure you that is not what I am. I am a political influencer with strong opinions about things, trying to share those with you. George Soros didn't hire me, right? I am not being paid. I am being paid by TikTok, just like every other influencer is paid by TikTok. TikTok has a creators fund, and we get, some of us can get paid in that creators fund based on how well our videos do. My videos don't do that great, so I get a little bit of money from TikTok every month. Any gift that people give me, I earn money off of. I have a Substack community that I'm building, and I sell subscriptions to that Substack community. I'm trying to build up my YouTube community. I don't monetize on YouTube yet because I don't have a large enough following. By the way, if you're watching this through Substack or through YouTube, please like and please subscribe. Please like. If you're here on Substack, please consider upgrading to a paid subscription because it's what allows me to do my work. I'm also a member. Full disclosure, I'm a member of a pro-democracy incubator called Chorus. In Chorus, we are not paid. We do receive a stipend every month. They are training us to be able to use the internet effectively and be able to level the playing field because most of the internet has been controlled in terms of political influencers has been controlled by the right wing. The conservatives were way better at this than the Democrats for the last decade. Chorus is an organization that is working hard to try to counterbalance that. So we get paid to train. It's an incubator program. So if you want to make the argument that I am a Democratic shill, feel free. I'm willing to own that argument, but don't try to bullshit myself and everybody else saying that that I am some extraordinarily well-funded influencer, being paid by some secret underground cabal to do this. That would be projection anyway, because that's exactly how the right has expanded its influence on the over. And there's nothing illegal about it, by the way. But that's exactly how right-wing podcasters, your favorite right-wing podcasters, have grown their followings. There's nothing illegal about it. They were just better at it than us. Billionaires like Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, and a lot of those creeps, other creeps for over the last decade and a half have funded right-wing podcasters. And again, there's nothing wrong with it other than the fact they're a threat to democracy, right? But in terms of the legality of doing it, those of us that are influencers, we're businesses. Anybody can invest in us. I mean, legally, anybody can invest, as long as it's a legal investment. So if these right-wing billionaires for years funded everyone from the Joe Rogans to the Tucker Carlsons to even worse, the Nick Fuentes and all of those folks, And now a lot of these folks are multimillionaires because they're influencers. Again, I don't like their messaging. I am here on the internet to counter that messaging, and I'm doing everything I can, working my butt off to try to make a living doing it. Shamelessly, by the way, shamelessly doing that. Um, but I'm no more of a shill than they are. We're all in the same game. They're just better funded than we are. Anyway, I just wanted to have that little disclaimer for you. Speaking of money, funding, and grift, though. So, why would it be so important? Why would it be so important for the village idiot Donald Trump? Remember 10 minutes ago, I was speaking about Donald Trump. One of the things that that was being reported that the DOJ was considering, that that Trump and his lawyers were considering. One of the things they were considering doing in order to settle this nonsensical $10 billion lawsuit before, in the next few days, the judge throws it out of court. If you're just joining us, the village idiot Donald Trump's $10 billion lawsuit against the IRS because a contractor several years ago, who's now spending 5 years in prison for his crime, released his tax returns, right? One of the settlements that they were looking at, as I mentioned not too long ago, was that Donald Trump would never be audited again, that the IRS would never audit him again, and that his audits in the past, his audits from years ago, would not matter. He would have, in essence, a get-out-of-jail-free card from the IRS. He could just commit as many white-collar crimes as he wants to. As I mentioned not too long ago, the Supreme Court, during the Biden administration, when the village idiot was on trial for the crimes he committed, one of which he was convicted of in New York, right? But when he was on trial for those, the Supreme Court gave him a get-out-of-jail-free card for any other crime, basically anything he does while he's president, right? As long as he says it's a public act, he has absolute immunity, right? So, but if part of the deal, the settlement, is to give the village idiot Donald Trump immunity once he's immunity from IRS audits, that means he's free to commit white-collar crime for the rest of his life, even when he's out of office. And the white-collar crimes that we know he committed prior to office won't matter anymore. Well, why is that important? Well, think about insider trading, right? What is insider trading? That's when someone trades a stock, someone, goes and makes trades. They buy or they sell stocks, or both, based on inside information about the company that they're trading, right? Insider information. They know something that everybody else doesn't know, so they have an unfair advantage, and they know if a company is going to, put out a new product or something. It's going to make the stock jump, and it's been under wraps for the last 10 years while they're doing research and development. If you had knowledge that in 3 days they're going to make this announcement and nobody knows about it, and you buy that stock at $100, right? But you had inside knowledge, say the CEO of the company is your friend, and he's like, yo, dude, we're going to put out this thing. You probably should buy some stock. I mean, this is the most obvious insider trading, but just to give you, I want to share the most obvious, just in case anybody doesn't know what it is. So, and then you buy that stock, and then that stock rockets up, to $140 a share, and you bought 10,000 shares, and you made a shit ton of money, right? For you and me, that would be a shit ton of money, not for the village idiot Donald Trump. And the IRS and the Securities and Exchange Commission got wind of this, and they were like, "Whoa, something isn't right with Shlomi Johnson's thing here, right? Mr. Johnson, it's not right." And the FBI comes and they investigate, and they saw that you do that. That's a crime. That's called insider trading. And until Donald Trump was president of the United States, that was kind of like illegal for everybody. And it still is, except for him, right? Because he does it all the time. You've seen market manipulation from the village idiot. Now, I think personally he's too dumb. There might be folks out there, and I can accept this. They're like, Mitch, you were always calling him the village idiot. You're always saying he's so dumb, but now you're saying he's smart enough to do insider trading. And I fully accept that criticism, because that's a bit of a contradiction. So before I continue on, let me inform you that I don't think that Donald Trump, the village idiot, is capable, is intellectually that he has even the limited intellectual capacity to engage in the most basic insider trading. I don't think he's capable of that. I think he's too dumb. But he is surrounded by people who are not as dumb, right? He is surrounded by people who also want to make money. He is surrounded by people who know how to do insider trading. And I'm sure he's surrounded by people who do insider trading for him. And the market manipulation that we've seen, where we get a, you know, where we'll get when he's in deep shit because the price of oil is increasing exponentially because he's fucking up the war in Iran that we should have never started, or he's screwing up, the ceasefire negotiations. But, gas is going up every day, every day, every day. And he knows that if he comes out and he lies, which he's done 1,000 times already, we had great progress, we had great conversations, they were fantastic talks with the Iranians, they were fantastic. We're gonna have a deal any minute. It's right around the corner. He knows, that at that point, the commodities market, where the price of oil is controlled, will react to that news and the price of commodities will go down. He's also doing it to, hopefully benefit his approval ratings, which it hasn't worked. But, there is no question in my mind. This is my opinion, but I think it's pretty obvious. This isn't news. It could be fake news, right? But it's my opinion. There's no question in my mind that there are commodities traders who are advising him when to say those things because they know how to buy on the dip of oil. They know how to buy low and sell high, right? So because they have the ultimate insider trading, they might know when the president of the United States is going to make a speech in advance and what he's going to say. And they know exactly what the market is going to do. They can bet on that. And there have been documented instances in this war where trades, we don't know who they were, but billions of dollars in a single trade has happened. Now, was that just good forecasting, good analysis, good guessing? Possibly, but highly unlikely. And I think, personally, it's very likely that behind the scenes, they're not just trading for themselves, but they're trading for the village idiot himself as well. That there is some sort of slush fund secret account where the village idiot Donald Trump is benefiting from this financially. He did it with, we know about the market manipulation with the tariff stupidity, with his tariff nonsense. There were, I can't think of any specific ones offhand because I didn't know I was going to go here in this conversation, but there were ample moments in the nonsensical tariff wars that he started with everyone, where the market was sort of crashing because because it was reacting to his tariff stupidity, right? It was reacting to the global response to his ignorance with tariffs and his incompetence, right? And then he would come out and he would make a speech and the market would shoot up. And there were it's probably almost impossible to track who made money and who didn't, who knew and who didn't know about Donald Trump's when he was going to make those speeches and how that was going to affect the market. You and I could have done it. We could have gone on to our favorite TD Ameritrade or JP Morgan Chase or Robinhood or wherever you might like to trade stocks, right? This is a hypothetical, right? But if some goon from the Trump administration who liked me was like, hey, Mitch, by the way, the village idiot is going to make an announcement at 10 a.m. today about how he's, how we're really super close to a trade deal with China, right? And the market is up to that point has been declining. And I know at 10 a.m. he's going to make that, he's going to make that announcement. I could probably pick any stock, right? Because the whole fucking market's going to go up, right? So I could buy a shit ton of any stock, right? Or if I, maybe let's just take an example. Maybe he was, maybe it was going to be the hot topic of trade that week was cars, was like, cars coming into the US or some shit. Or maybe it was going to be aluminum and steel because there's a 50% tariff on that. And he's going to make the announcement that I'm going to temporarily hold back on the aluminum and steel tariffs. We're going to hold back temporarily. We're going to have negotiations, and we're this close to making a deal with China. Right? So maybe I'd buy steel, some, steel company or something, right? But that's market manipulation. It was obviously happening, right? Nonstop, throughout the whole tariff thing, right? So he needs to be protected from that. But guess what? Now, this is not getting a lot of play. This article came out, I guess, did it come out today? I don't see a date on it. It came out yesterday. I don't know why it's not getting any play. Maybe because the idiot's catastrophic trip to China took out all the oxygen in the news cycle. But this is a pretty big story. Trump went big on TikTok. Again, TikTok, you guys can't see this. It's CNBC is reporting it. I'm just going to read it. Trump went big on TikToks in the first quarter of 2026. New filings show. Let's just read a little bit of it, and then we'll talk about it. President Donald Trump, the village idiot, they don't say the village idiot, I do, reported thousands of financial transactions totaling hundreds of millions of dollars, including large purchases and sales of tech giants NVIDIA, Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, in the first 3 months of 2026, new disclosure forms reveal. Trump's filings with the U.S. Office of Government Ethics show more than 3,700 transactions, with the total amount for each listed as a range rather than an exact figure. 3,700 transactions in his name. The transactions which became public on Thursday are valued between $220 million and $750 million cumulatively, according to Reuters. Trump's biggest purchases and sales skewed toward the tech sector, the filings showed. Among the dozens of transactions valued between $1 million and $5 million in the first quarter of 2026, Trump bought securities of ServiceNow, NVIDIA, Adobe, Microsoft, Oracle, Broadcom, Motorola, Amazon, Texas Instruments, and Dell, the filings show. Trump's 4 largest sales in that period were also tech-heavy. He sold between $5 million and $25 million in Microsoft, Amazon, Meta. On February 10th, according to documents, the timing of the president's transactions overlapped with news from the companies whose stock he was buying or selling, the outlets on notice reported. So now, let me just read this one, and then we're going to talk about it. The village idiot also bought between $500,000 and $1 million worth of NVIDIA stock 1 week before the Commerce Department officially approved the sale of some NVIDIA chips to China. That's insider trading. How could it not be, right? So here's the thing, guys. Let's take NVIDIA, right? Well, first of all, the argument that this is ethical is ridiculous. The argument that this is legal is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's laughable, right? The MAGA argument, which is a valid argument, there aren't a lot of common points of agreement between myself and the MAGA community, but there are some. The Epstein cover-up is unacceptable. I'd like not to see that. I think most of the MAGA community is big on that. No more fucking wars. I think the MAGA community and I are aligned on that. The ones that are, true to what they believed before Trump just told them to believe something else, which many of the MAGA community members are with me on those areas. The area where members of Congress should not be allowed to buy and trade stocks when they are in office is a big thing in the MAGA community, right? And they're hyper-focused. They don't really think, many of them, that some of their favorite Republicans are doing it, but they are big on the fact that Nancy Pelosi has done it, and that's their way to get Pelosi. And I agree that members of Congress should not be allowed to buy and trade stocks because they directly influence policy, laws that affect those companies that they can buy and sell, right? That's it. It's insider trading, right? If you're in control of tech policy, right? If that's your thing and you're on a subcommittee that handles tech policy and you're going to move legislation up that's going to affect technology companies, you should not be allowed to buy technology stocks or sell them, period. And because, the issue is so broad, and because invariably, even though a particular subcommittee and a committee are the ones that bring up or dive deep into specific legislation that can affect any particular industry, everybody in the House votes or is supposed to vote on that legislation, no matter what committee or subcommittee, no matter what industry is involved, right? So you have this broad problem where every member of the House and the Senate should not be allowed to buy and trade stocks. It's that simple because they have a direct influence on those stocks. I agree with the MAGA community on that 1,000%. But where do you stand, MAGA community? Are you with me, I ask you, on the fact that the President of the United States, your president, certainly if Congress can't do it, if it should be against the law for Congress to do it, can't we all agree that it should be against the law for the President of the United States to do it? And you can make the argument, well, he doesn't have access to it. This is if they're reporting it, which they are, and I'm sure they're underreporting it, but they're at least reporting it, right? If they're reporting it, if the Trump administration is actually reporting something, they're following some sense of legality, right? Because this is, I'm sure, in a trust that the village idiot doesn't have access to now. He won't have access to until after he's president anymore. And that's the argument that they're making on why it's not an ethical conflict of interest, right? He's not directly trading. Whoever is running this fund is trading for him. And it's a trust that he can't access that money when they sell those stocks, right? Of course, he's still benefiting from them. Of course, it's fucking ridiculous, but that's the argument I'm sure they're making. Right. And again, fact check me on that because I don't know. I believe that. Right. But can we all agree? And I hope we can that he shouldn't be allowed to, like Congress shouldn't be allowed to. Let's assume and I'm not looking at the chat right now, so I apologize if you guys are agreeing or not, and that I'm not responding to it. But let's say we agree on that now. Can we agree that this reporting right now that I'm just reading to you from CNBC is blockbuster reporting? Because Donald Trump is buying and selling stocks for tech companies that he is controlling, right? The government has a 10% stake in NVIDIA. NVIDIA is now the biggest company in terms of market cap. It's in the United States, maybe the world. It's a $4 trillion fucking company. The entire U.S. AI industry, which in and of itself represents 50% of our gross domestic product. If the AI industry, if that bubble bursts, that's another conversation we'll have on another day. If that bubble bursts today, we're fucked 3 ways to Sunday as a country because we instantly lose half of our GDP. It's 6 or 7 companies that, in essence, are responsible for half of the entire growth of the U.S. economy. That's pretty freaking scary, right? But this idiot, Donald Trump, signed an executive order. I think it was when he first became president. Maybe it was a little bit later. Basically saying that there can be no regulation. And it's bullshit because it doesn't mean anything. But the point is, he signed an executive order basically outlawing any state from being able to regulate AI development in their state. Now, again, it doesn't mean anything. Only chicken shit GOP governors in red states are listening to him. Governors in blue states are telling him to go F himself. They could really care less. His executive order means nothing. They can do what they want, right? But that executive order in and of itself moved the markets, right? Now, granted, that came out a long time ago, right? But that executive order moved the markets, certainly did, right? And that idiot knew he was going to be making that executive order. So I'm not. We're talking about stocks that were traded now in 2026, but I'm just taking you back in time a little bit, right? If the idiot was buying and selling these stocks in 2025 when that executive order came out, right? If the idiot was buying, or somebody was buying and selling stocks for the idiot, right? And they were buying, say, Nvidia, right? That would be insider trading, wouldn't it? Because they would surely know when the president's executive order was going to come out, when the Nvidia stock was going to skyrocket because the order would come out. And on top of that, the Village Idiot represents the United States of America, which owns 10% of Nvidia. You know what I mean? So how the fuck can you trade Nvidia? How could you even trade Nvidia as the president of the United States and not be breaking, having some microphone problems here, and not be breaking the law, right? How's that the insider trading laws? How's that possible? How's it possible that my microphone is super tight and still bouncing around like this? That's another story. You ever see Trump when he gets mad? When the microphone doesn't work? I can't. I'm the most important person in the world, and there's no sound. I can't. The microphone is moving around. I can't. It's not going to be dumb. There's stupid people. Can you get the stupid people out here to fix? Can you get the stupid people to fix the microphone? I can't take it. It's not working. It's all over the place. Stupid. Mitch is an idiot. He's so stupid. Mitch, why don't you fix it? I'm not calling you. He's a good guy, but he's a very stupid person. Very low IQ. It's so I entertain myself. I do. I really do. It's a problem. I mean, look, I am probably as much of a narcissist as the Village Idiot is as well. Anyway, let's take Nvidia again as another example. Let's go to present day, right? The idiot buys Nvidia, in 2026, right? The idiot buys Meta, right? What was it? Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, Nvidia, right? The idiot just went to China on that catastrophic trip, right? That absolute disaster. Humiliated himself, humiliated the United States of America, humiliated the CEOs. Well, they humiliated themselves by going, but one of those CEOs was Jensen. I can't think of his first name. He's the CEO of Nvidia, right? Just the fact that he was going with the Village Idiot probably bumped the stock. I don't know that. I'm just guessing that, right? So do we think that since Donald Trump is buying Nvidia anyway, that when that purchase was made, that the people who were buying Nvidia for the Village Idiot Donald Trump didn't know that he was going to be taking the CEO from Nvidia with him to China? Can't imagine they didn't know that. I'm sure when it was announced that the CEO of Nvidia was going to China, right, the stocks bumped. I'm sure he bought and made millions of dollars personally just off of that alone, right? And then there was reporting while the Village Idiot was in China and the CEO of Nvidia was there with him, there was some reporting that came out. Now the reporting has kind of shifted, so we don't know anymore where it stands. Oh, we got another restriction on the audience. Who cares? I can't deal with TikTok's nonsense. While the Village Idiot was in China, right? We know that Nvidia. There was some reporting that Nvidia's fastest chips, the ones that are really considered that are not allowed to be sold in China. There are our fastest, most powerful chips for AI. The Village Idiot allowed NVIDIA to sell powerful chips, but not our fastest chips previously to the Chinese, right? Because that was an advantage that we supposedly had over the Chinese when it came to AI. Whether or not that's true, but that's the reporting, right? I think it's called the A200 chip. Again, fact check me on that. I'm not sure I think that's what it's called. So some reporting came out. I don't remember if it was in CNBC or Bloomberg. I think it was Bloomberg that was on the table. That the idea that Trump might agree with might allow President Xi, might tell President Xi that he's going to allow NVIDIA to sell these highest end chips. Now, again, we don't know where that stands. Like subsequent reporting after that has made that a little bit, a little bit opaque. The Village Idiot. I don't know if I don't remember if he specifically said that's not happening. We're not selling the chips to China, but there's been some ambiguity about that. Maybe it's not happening. I honestly don't know. But I remember the reporting that came out that it might be happening. So, of course, again, I can't imagine, and I don't want to perpetuate fake news because I haven't been watching this. I don't watch the stock market that closely, but I can't imagine that when the reporting came out, if it was Bloomberg or CNBC or whoever, right? I can't imagine that that the stock didn't jump, because investors are going to like that, right? If suddenly, NVIDIA is allowed to sell these chips that it hasn't been allowed to sell, that's going to be appealing to investors, and they're going to buy the stock, and the stock's going to jump, right? So again, knowing that Trump is buying stocks for companies that he is personally propping up, right? You have this example where this news broke about the chips. Certainly, that news was leaked by someone from the Trump administration, right? So although we don't know, it's certainly not unreasonable to speculate that these stock traders for the Village Idiot Donald Trump opted to, on inside information, to buy the stock, buy more of NVIDIA stock. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know where else I want to go with it. I think I've made my point. My point is that this is a real-time grift that we are watching happen in real time. It is inarguably a crime. Let me repeat that. It is Gamer, it's NVIDIA's advanced H200 artificial intelligence chip. Thank you for the clarification on that. So it's inarguably a grift. There are areas where you may be able to speculate and say, I don't know if there's insider trading there, but there could be. And then there are areas where you're like, of course there was insider trading. And of course that insider trading doesn't just benefit Donald Trump, the Village Idiot, it benefits his wealthy friends. And you'd have to be beyond naive to consider some alternate reality where they don't know about this in advance and they're just making really good guesses, right? That would be pretty ridiculous. So anyway, on that note, I want to check out a couple of comments, and then we're going to kind of wrap the live. Those of you on TikTok, I tend to try to keep these lives tighter and a little bit shorter because I also like to use them as video posts on TikTok and Substack. I'm sorry, on YouTube and Substack, and sometimes these longer videos don't really work for those communities. Before I take the comments, I just want to remind everyone, if you're with me on YouTube or Substack or TikTok, please like. If you're on TikTok, please follow. If you're on YouTube or Substack, please subscribe. If it's comfortable for you, although we're not monetized on YouTube yet, if it's comfortable for you on Substack, please consider either upgrading or joining for a paid subscription. That's what allows me to keep doing my work. So thank you all for that. So let's take a couple of TikTok comments. Storm Rider, 10% to the USA looks pretty socialist too. You're talking about 10% ownership, like we own 10% of NVIDIA, 10% of Intel, 100%. It's for the anti, they despise democratic socialists like Mandami crowd, and they despise socialism. which also means that they don't want police, because it's all socialist, right? In terms of government, government funded services. Um, Buying up, one can make an argument that the government buying up private country companies is socialist. One can make an argument that that is, if you're going to eventually turn those into state-sponsored corporations, one could make the argument that that is a move toward authoritarian communism. Just saying. Um, so, Jeff, overturning Citizens United is imperative to stop the corporate influence on politicians. I could not agree with you more. There's no chance of. I mean, right now we've got a Supreme Court that we can't. We're desperate to try to see if we've got a Supreme Court right now that will just keep keep the Confederacy from reconstituting it in the South, let alone get into more serious issues like overturning Citizens United. I've been on both sides of the coin when it comes to the idea of packing the Supreme Court, because I think Republicans being in control, when they get back in control, they may do the same thing. But we're at a point now where the court is so extremist, so clearly corrupted by partisan politics. And Republicans have achieved this supermajority Supreme Court control through cheating, starting with Mitch McConnell, aka Merrick Garland, and President Obama, that we are at a point where the court is so fucking out of balance that in 2028, when we have a Democratic president, we have a Democratic House, and we have a Democratic Senate, which I have no doubt will be the case. I think it would be, almost anti-constitutional at that point not to reform the court. And a lot of folks are using the term court reform to carefully tiptoe around the idea without saying it of packing the court. But I think it includes term limits and packing the court 100%, because this court has lost its fucking mind. Jeff, it's really not packing the court. There are 13 districts equals 13 SCOTUS justices. You know what? I did not know that, and I appreciate the context on that, and I appreciate the semantics and words matter. So I'm going to make a little note for myself, actually, because this is something I feel like I should know about. Let me just write this here. Hang on, I just got to let TikTok live studio know I'm still here. Hang on 1 second. I just want to make. There we go. And I don't know what the heck TikTok Live Studio is asking me to do, but court 13 districts. I'm going to learn about that. I appreciate the information there. I need to educate myself because I don't know that. I didn't know that at all. So thank you for that. I appreciate the context on that. Let me just back up a little bit. Doug says English isn't your first tongue. Doug is arguing with somebody. It's not really nice, Doug. Don't be, don't go there. Insider traders, no doubt, buy Trump coin as payback to Trump. Insider traders buy the Trump coin as payback to Trump. I think I understand what you're saying. I mean, is the Trump coin something? Can you still buy that? Didn't that totally go bust? If you're not familiar with Trump coin, it was Trump's meme coin, cryptocurrency. I know what I thought happened with Trump coin, and I could please correct me on it because I don't follow crypto like I used to. I used to be a crypto reporter, actually. But I thought it was just your typical, classic rug pull, where, the Trump and his family, World Liberty Financial or whatever. I don't know if they were dealing with it or whoever. They created the Trump coin, and then, and then they invested, next to nothing, and they, got all these suckers to buy the Trump, into Trump coin, and then just sort of pulled the rug out from underneath it. I figured that's where the That's what I kind of figured happened with it, but I don't know. I didn't follow it that quickly. Rachel says blah. Rachel says you are trying to start a revolution. Rachel said you are successful. I am very depressed listening to you. I mean, again, I know, Rachel, you were debating with somebody else. I mean, look, there's no reason, whether you're part of the pro-democracy community or the MAGA community or no community, I don't encourage anybody to, like, I don't want anybody to feel depressed. Like, there's, you know what I mean? Like, I don't, that's not my goal here. My goal is to move, is to level the playing field, in terms of information, to try to tell the truth because it seems to be hard to determine what that is, and to try to, like so many other pro-democracy creators, to try to give an alternative to what I think is the right wing toxic muck that's ruining our democracy out here on social media, and to make a living doing it. That's my goal. But I don't want to depress anyone. I honestly don't. I think there's enough. No matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, I think there's enough communal and individual depression that we're all suffering with. And honestly, if listening to my content or listening to me feels depressing, then and I'm not saying this to be sarcastic or obnoxious, but don't listen to me. It's not worth it. It's not. I mean, it's not worth it to. I want people to be, other than a political influencer and a political junkie, right, and a former reporter, right. My other thing that I really am into, and I would, and if not for the Trump administration, I might be doing this, is I love wellness. I'm a certified life coach, if you can believe that. With my fucking mouth, right, and my attitude. But I meditate, if you could believe that, like all the time. And I really want people to be well. And I'm not talking about Maha, RF Kennedy Jr. kind of, fake, unhealthy and dangerous wellness. I'm talking about eat more vegetables. I'm talking about meditate, exercise, which I have been off the exercise bandwagon for about 4 months now, and I'm really ashamed to admit that as a person who believes in wellness. So I need to start working out again immediately. But like, I don't want you to be. I think mental health is imperative. The only mockery I make in the mental health space is of Donald Trump, because he's mentally unstable, and it's to the point where it's so ridiculous and so dangerous to the country. And I think mockery is the only way to break through with that. But I don't stigmatize mental health in any way, shape, or form. I have my own issues that I've struggled with throughout my life, of anxiety. Although I feel like I've got that, manageable and under control, and I feel like I've pretty much gotten past it. But I certainly suffered at times in my life with crippling anxiety. I honestly think although I don't, I haven't been formally diagnosed. I honestly think at this point, through, especially as a content creator, watching my content come back at me, I could see where I almost certainly have ADHD and probably some dyslexia, which isn't a mental health. Those aren't mental health challenges, but they're still, stigmatized issues. So I don't want anybody to be depressed. And if watching my content, Rachel, if you're still with us, I mean, no, and again, not to sound like I'm being, what's the word I'm looking for? Confrontational. I'm not. But if you're not just saying that, and you really feel depressed listening to me, don't listen to me. Don't watch my content. And don't watch the content of anybody who depresses you, because you deserve better than that. Or, you know what I mean? It's not, none of us need to be depressed. There's enough difficulties in the world that we don't need to go online and be depressed. Anyway, that's all. That's the best I could do about that. Let's see. Substack. I'm sorry, guys. I haven't gotten to. Let's see if there's any comment. Substack. My Substack feed sometimes gets a little hung up, and I can't pull it down. So the only. Hey, Winifred, how are you? Irish Aggie, how are you? And Gamer, I've got your comment on here for the H200 artificial intelligence NVIDIA advanced chip. There might be more comments. I can't tell, but I can't move the move the chat down. So I think that'll be a good moment to wrap this up. Thank you guys for being here. Let's see if we can, one more shameless plug. If you're with us, if you're with me on Substack or YouTube, please subscribe. I want to really get. I mean, there's small communities, and I want to build them up. I want to get to 1,000 followers in subscribers in both spaces. Please do it. If you're here on TikTok, you're not following. Let's get to 69. Well, let's make it 70,000. Let's see if we can push that to 70,000. Please follow me. Let's try to get that number to 70,000. Let me see if we can hit some cool goals here. I love you guys. 1 minute at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time, one live or recording at a time. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the group therapy. This is how we get through this. We chunk through it 1 day at a time, and we'll make it through. It'll be 2026, the midterms. The Democrats will have won, and we'll be in a better place. And then before you know it, it'll be 2028, and we'll have a new president, and we'll figure out how we're going to get out of this mess. Thank you, Irish Aggie. I definitely will give your best to Ritu as well. Much love to you. All right, take care, guys. Since I'm on TikTok today, I have to wrap you guys first, and because I have to click 2 buttons to end the live. So TikTok, thank you so much, guys. I'll see you soon. Be well. And everybody else, thank you. I'll see you soon. Take care, guys.